Hello, hello, listeners. It is the week of May 9th. We're coming at you with Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox, with, of course, the astrology for this week and a cute little dream. Michael, I remember last week you said that this will be the toughest
Yeah,
month
yeah,
or the
yeah, yeah.
worst month. I forget the verbiage, but how's it going for you?
Listen, toughest, worst. I mean, any language will do. It's a rough month. And I would also say that last week, which featured like some really powerful Uranian influences with the sun and
Mhm.
Uranus came together. Uranus is the great awakener. He was very close to the sun in the eclipse that was just over a week ago. And so, the world was filled with unexpected, sudden, things we all had to grapple with on the world stage, on the political stage, needless to say.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Personally, for me, you know this, so, and many of the people who I work with know this, but I'll share it here with my podcast listening audience. I'm in a vocal injury challenge that is totally upending my life and my work. I'm sure my voice sounds just fine to all of you. And sometimes people, when I say that, they think, oh, you have laryngitis, Michael? It's like, no, no, I don't have like a hoarse voice that I need to rest to get my full voice back. I did some primal screaming at the new moon in Pisces 2 months ago because it was right on my Chiron and I was on my body workers table. And while I did deep, deep, deep primal screaming, that wasn't what was the problem in terms of what I'm in now with my voice now, is that I just went back into my regular crazy amount of how much I use my voice every day. And 4 or 5 days after that event, I just was in crisis. So I'm in like this weird vocal crisis that has had me. I've had to cancel a lot of sessions. I might have to take a 2, 3 week sabbatical and cancel dozens and dozens of sessions if my voice can't make it through this moment. And let me say this eclipse is all about the sun in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, and Taurus rules the throat chakra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, enough about me and my personal struggles with this month because I am having that May experience. And I know that the world is having that May experience. Certainly, the political landscape in the United States is exhibiting that May challenge. And it absolutely continues this week. All sorts of things happening with Mercury retrograde and Jupiter changing signs and the eclipse coming up. So let's break all of this down.
This morning is the fourth time I've taken my car into the shop since I saw you 1 week ago.
Oh my Lord. Well, that's a perfect example of anything can happen and probably will.
Two flat tires, Michael, in the middle of downtown. Anything and everything can happen.
And probably will, as I like to say. Well, it's going to get a little kookier, even just starting tomorrow, because tomorrow is the day that Mercury turns around and goes retrograde.
Great.
And he's in Gemini, which is one of Mercury's ruling signs, which is actually more challenging, not less, especially because he's in the sign of Gemini. Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo. So both of those signs are very connected to communication, but it's in Virgo where it's all about precision and exacting, detailed communication and what words can do when they're sort of constructed in a beautiful and masterful way. But in Gemini, it's just words, just words, 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 words. So the mind is already going to be overactivated just by having Mercury in Gemini, which in and of itself isn't a bad air quotes thing astrologically. Gemini is a beautiful archetype like any of the others, but it is the archetype of thought, words, and it can then lead to the experience of monkey mind, overthinking, anxiety. And when Mercury goes retrograde in that sign, we have a extra, portion of the potential for breakdowns in communication, confusion, scattered thoughts, and inability to focus. And we are hitting, the 2.5 week process of Mercury's backward motion starting tomorrow. Now, of course, if you've been paying attention during the pre shadow, which started on April 26th, you probably know everything that's going to come up during the next 2.5 weeks, because that's sort of how Mercury retrogrades work, that we get hinted at the breakdown, the struggle, the challenge, while Mercury is traversing the territory that he's going to revisit when he turns around. So between tomorrow and June 2nd, really June 2nd, 3rd, depending on your time zone, Mercury will be traveling back over all of the territory he triggered from late April till and through tomorrow. Glance back to have a more graceful experience of knowing what might be coming at you over the next 2.5 weeks. In general, there's an archetypal sensibility about this entire Mercury retrograde cycle that has to do with the fact that Mercury is going to backtrack into Taurus while he's moving backwards. It's not just in Gemini. He's straddling over these two mansions. And so what that has to offer us from an archetypal perspective is scattered thoughts, disconnected communication is designed during this retrograde to teach us how we can become more grounded and stable in our thinking, in our communication. Because Taurus is all about that sort of grounded stability. Gemini is where we lose the ground and rise up into the air, which is certainly a necessary part of being alive and in a body and human. But in terms of what we're going to be learning about during this retrograde period is how to think slower, communicate in a more deliberate way. And that's going to be a challenge over the next 2.5 weeks, right? So be prepared, everybody, especially as we move out of this week and into next week, because we have our next eclipse coming up as well. So the wave of intense energy is greater as the month progresses. But starting tomorrow, our perception and our moving through those challenges will actually get more discombobulating and problematic from the neck up. Now, the next big thing of the month also happens this week, and that's the planet Jupiter changing signs. This happens on Wednesday, May 11th. Jupiter's going to enter Aries. Typically, Jupiter spends about a year in every sign that he travels through, but that's because of retrograde motion, right? He'll spend a couple of months moving backwards. And so if he enters a sign and retrogrades in that sign, he'll spend a full 12 months in whatever sign we're talking about. He didn't do that in Pisces, which is in a way a bit of a shame because Jupiter's so happy in Pisces. It's his old rulership sign back in classical astrology before Neptune was discovered. Jupiter ruled Pisces. And because Jupiter didn't retrograde in Pisces, he entered that sign at the very beginning of the year, just right as December was becoming January. And 4 months later, he's like, bye-bye. I'm moving into Aries. So what we're experiencing in Jupiter changing signs is a couple of different things that you want to know about. First and foremost, Jupiter as the planet that allows us to manifest the desires that we have.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yo, this is actually really good news.
Yeah.
Jupiter and the sign he's in tells us how to best approach the process of creating more of what you desire.
Hmm.
Pisces is the archetype of imagination, the place where things are formless before they become form. Pisces also represents the unconscious, which is also from a psychological place where we form our ideas from. So all form comes from this place of non form. So, with the planet of manifestation in the sign of Pisces, the way to move forward in creating that which you desire is to focus on the inside job about that.
Hmm.
Very much about feeling into what you want to create from that manifestation perspective that says that you not only have to have an idea of what you want, that it's helpful to then also feel the excitement of the possibility of what you want to create. And Pisces is the archetype where that would be the easiest to accomplish. Once Jupiter moves into Aries, now we're talking action. Aries is Mars's sign. So it's the sign where we understand that nothing happens unless we take the action. So for the first 4 months of the year, things that we've been brewing sort of on the insides of us, ideas that we have about what we want to create, have been sort of an inside job. And what we get to move into for the next bunch of months is action, is how we create the desires we have. It's time to take action. It's
Yeah.
time to put those felt ideas into movement. I'll think about it this way. It's like if somebody comes to me for a session and they're feeling like they're behind the eight ball a little bit in terms of like taking actions to create something that they desire, and the planet of manifestation is in Pisces, I might say to them something like, don't worry about it. Focus on the inside. Keep your imagination lit up about what it is you want to create. And don't worry too much if you feel behind the eight ball in terms of making things actually occur. But once Jupiter's in Aries, the story would be very different. It's like, no, 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 no. Now you got to act. Now you got to move.
And I feel like people love asking you that. They're like, "Should I quit my job this week
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
next
yeah.
week?"
Right. Well, and here I'd answer that question is I would say last week, you should think about it and feel into whether it's a good idea. This week, I'd just say quit your job and figure it out after. Take the action, and then worry about the consequences. Don't ask for permission. Trust that you can ask for forgiveness later.
It reminds me from the beginning of the year how you were saying the first half of the year is gonna be more like planning, and then there's gonna be a lot more movement in the second half. Would you say this is
Yes,
the
this is
trigger?
absolutely the biggest thrust of that idea comes from this movement of Jupiter into Aries. Now, he'll backtrack into Pisces for a tiny little bit in November and December.
Mhm.
So he'll be changing gears a little bit as the year ends, and we'll talk all about that when we get there. But understand for the next bunch of months, when in doubt, take up some sort of action even if it's the tiny first step just to see what comes with the second step that's right behind it, right? That's one general message about Jupiter moving into Aries. But I would also add this Jupiter's a social planet, so is Saturn. So when either of those planets change signs, the social fabric of humans on Earth is impacted.
Mhm.
Right? So when the personal planets move, we feel that at the personal level. When the outer planets move, we feel that at a deep collective level that includes what I like to call higher consciousness or the divine or any words will do. That's Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. The social planets of Jupiter and Saturn reflect things that are happening right outside your door. So that means that in a already amplified month where eclipses are knocking us through, crazy time, we also get this big new fiery sensation of movement and action that we're going to see play out in all sorts of ways, both in your individual lives and moving out and taking actions to create new things, but also a little bit more fire, a little bit more aggressiveness, a little bit more for what's going on the planet that we all collectively share.
Mhm.
Right. So, in a month where there's also all kinds of shit happening with wars and domestic stuff that's just knocking everybody for a loop, this wave of fiery energy is going to add some potential instability for the rest of May as we move through this next eclipse that rounds out this wormhole that we're moving into. There is so much to potentially say about this total lunar eclipse that hits next Sunday. I'm almost not sure where to begin, but I'm going to begin just from the perspective of that this full moon is in Scorpio and that all full moons, eclipses or not, all full moons are moments where we are carried through or thrown through an opportunity to let go of stuff, to release things that no longer serve us. In fact, I would say that while I mean, I don't really mean this, that like full moons are more important than new moons because you don't have one without the other. That's like saying
Right.
one side of the coin is more important than the other side. But in terms of what I'm a stand for in life, I am a stand for helping people understand the process of change and transformation that comes when we face the shadow, look in the mirror, do not shrink back from the deepest parts of ourselves where shame and rage drive us. But if we don't heal those experiences and release those old wounds, we can't grow. If we don't grow in consciousness and wisdom and healing, we can't create the lives that we're actually capable of creating. So, in the spirit of all full moons bringing an opportunity to release something that's deeply embedded in your psyche, there is no stronger archetype for that process than Scorpio. Scorpio invented death. Death is therefore always followed by a rebirth. And so, in the Scorpio full moon, we do more releasing than other signs. We do more deep work. We're less afraid of the intensities that are required when we dive into our shadow work. So I love this eclipse and this month of May for that opportunity. Because it's an eclipse, that transformative energy is amplified. The shadow breaking that relentless beam of light of consciousness that pours out from the sun. That's our reset experience, like turning the machine off and on again so that it'll function better, right? And so if you think of every lunar cycle as a kind of psychic surgery, we enter the lunar cycle with a new moon sort of in the thrust of forward movement driven by our desires and our intentions. And it's at the full moon that we sort of get stopped for a second. And our psyche says, okay, I heard you. I heard what you want to create.
Hmm.
Now, what do you have to let go of in order to have that thing you desire come into form?
This pairs quite nicely with Jupiter and Aries, huh?
Well, absolutely, because Jupiter in Aries kind of has a great deal of promise built into it.
Right, right, right.
Jupiter in Pisces says, I think I can, I think I can. And Jupiter in Aries says, let's go.
Yes.
But the eclipse in Scorpio says, wait, you can't actually sprint forward if you're carrying that frickin' bag of shit that you've been lugging around your whole life. And every full moon is an opportunity to let go of something. The Scorpio full moon is an opportunity to do that at a much, much, much deeper level. And an eclipse makes it even more powerful. And I'll even throw in this. This is a total eclipse. And there's a difference between a partial and a total, just in terms of volume and intensity. So this is a more intense eclipse and more
Mhm.
capable of allowing us to have that sort of psychic surgery of removing and releasing all that no longer serves. Now, this whole wormhole that we're in is profoundly unstable because the new moon in Taurus was conjunct Uranus, that planet that brings the unexpected. Now, the sun is still pretty close to Uranus in this full moon, enough to like merit speaking about, which makes this another unstable moment. By unstable, I just mean you just never know what's going to happen during this month. Like you really just never know. So don't be surprised by anything that should rise up.
I'm like, "Man, I gotta say some prayers that it goes one way and not the other."
Well, there you have it. Like that is what to do.
Yeah,
You dial up your prayers about what way you want it to go, and then you respect what happens because that's life on life's terms. Yeah,
true.
right. One of the things I've been talking about a lot this year is how there's been these very different threads of energy, where on the one hand, there's all this positive, expansive, yummy, driven largely by Jupiter and Neptune and Venus hanging out in Pisces, the manifestation sign. I've been certainly talking about this a lot in my daily email subscription series, the Daily Astro Alerts, but also mentioning it in my little videos, the Red Robe Astrology videos, that there's these two potential energies to grab onto. And the question I'm often asking is, what are you focusing on?
Hmm.
Because there's plenty of yummy, delightful possibility to focus on. But there's also challenge, breakdown, and reckoning that's brutal this year. The yummy has been driven by these Piscean energies. And I'll even go so far as to say Jupiter in Aries is going to benefit from his stay in Pisces. He's carrying with him the power of Neptune's connection to spirit and the love of Venus, because she was part of this whole process of the Piscean gathering. So the transiting planet that's been behind all of the difficulty is Saturn. Saturn always brings the lesson and the thing we have to face, right? But Saturn is T squaring the nodes of the moon this year, meaning he's forming a square with both the south and the north node at the same time. And that means that we are reckoning with and learning lessons and being confronted with having to handle stuff from the past while simultaneously attempting to move forward into the future. But both directions are riddled with obstacles, breakdowns, lessons, and challenges. Eclipses are caused or generated by the nodes of the moon. So this is a full moon where both the sun and the moon are squaring Saturn, as well as the nodes squaring Saturn. Saturn has his handprint all over not only this lunation, this eclipse, but the whole month. And you could even sort of say the peak of this is the eclipse next Sunday. So let's anthropomorphize Saturn for a moment and imagine what he might have been saying around the new moon. Because at the new moon, when we set intentions, Saturn was squaring the nodes just as he is now. So the message there would be, I heard your intentions, honey. Yay. Glad you're thinking big. Guess what? There's some shit you're going to have to learn before you could possibly manifest those desires. So then the teacher goes to the corner of the room, waits out the next 2 weeks between that new moon and the full moon that's coming up on Sunday. And then he's back in our face. Only now it's a little more intense because the geometry is a little more exact. The sun and the moon are both in a square with Saturn. Now the teacher's like, this is what I was talking about.
We learn our lesson.
We learn our lesson. It's another reason why you can say the month is difficult, because no one is going to escape bumping right into whatever lesson is designed for them at this time.
Mhm.
Personally, for me, it's all about my voice and having to sort of deal with something Well, I mean, I'll just say it this way. The fact that I'm in a vocal challenge right now is my own flippant fault. It did not occur to me after that primal screaming that I needed a rest. And I woke up the next day and I didn't have any problem on
Yeah.
Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday. It was like, woohoo. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday was like, holy fuck. My full moon is continuing to grapple with, all right, not like, why did this happen in a karmic way? Like, oh, I'm a bad boy, therefore I lost my voice. It's more like,
Mhm.
now that this has happened, how am I going to be? And who am I going to be while facing this difficult thing I have to let go of? Even if what I'm letting go of is I'm not in control of everything. Even if letting go of stuff is I might have to disappoint some of my clients in order to rest in the manner that I have to. Each of you will have your own Saturn lesson, struggles, lessons, or breakdowns or challenges that came along with the new moon might give you some clues about what's coming. So understand that in this full moon, whatever it is we are being charged with having to learn or face or let go of, it's going to be big energetically. However, here's the juicy nugget, which is not necessarily going to be comfortable, but valuable. And that is that Venus and Chiron are conjunct when this full moon is exact. That's stunning. Venus has moved into Aries. She's not so comfortable here. She's a little bit on fire in the sign of Aries that Mars rules. But she's certainly empowered to take actions that relate to what the heart desires, wants, and needs. By conjuncting Chiron during a full moon eclipse that's guaranteed to put you through some kind of challenging death rebirth in your own psyche, Venus and Chiron in a conjunction tells us it's absolutely going to be a healing. You can trust that. Something I shared a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, and I hope people are getting this and remembering it, that if Venus spent a couple of months in a powerful retrograde, which she did, she will carry what she created or generated or exposed during those first months of the year with her as she traverses the entire ecliptic over the next 2 years. So this particular gathering of Venus and Chiron has more depths for us because of what we learned about how we each give and receive love or hinder our ability to give and receive love. And those lessons will inform the healing that's possible now. So while this entire month is unlikely to be comfortable for anybody, and this upcoming week might be the most difficult week of the month, trust me, please, when I tell you that what we're going through has so much power to transform your future that I invite you all to take whatever difficulty that you're moving through now and surrender to it with as much sort of enthusiasm and gusto as you can, even if you're in some pain and suffering and difficulty. Because I assure you, what's transforming in our insides now is going to help us create magnificent lives down the line. Have at it.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week in dreams, we have an email in from Kaya, and I just wanted to share that she found you on TikTok, Michael.
Loving TikTok.
I know, and apparently it's working, as proved by this email. Okay, so Kaya's dream is when I was younger, maybe around 8 to 10, during my parents' divorce, I started having this reoccurring dream. It was more so a nightmare for me at that age. The dream takes place in a long red barn with haystacks in the middle. And in this barn, I'm with my family, my mom, dad, and younger twin brothers. Now, in the barn, we're all being chased by wolves. The barn is never ending, and it just feels like we're being chased by these wolves for eternity. They never catch us, but it gets tiring being in the loop of being chased by them. I would have these every night for a really long time, and then one day it just stopped. I think back to this dream often and always wonder what it was trying to tell me. I would really appreciate your response. Take care.
Well, first of all, if this dream recurred for a short period of time during, you know, challenging family divorce time, then we know that it was helping,
Right.
right? It was helping Kaya process what was going on. Certainly, one of the reasons we know that is because the dream stopped kind of suddenly, which means that whatever the dream was assisting with resolved itself enough that the dream could go away. Now, without Kaya here to ask what her personal associations might be to barns or farms or haystacks or wolves, I can't get like some of the distinctions I'd prefer to have,
Mm,
but certainly a barn as an image has something to do, I'm guessing, with the change in what is ultimately the sustenance and nurturance of a family, right? A divorce says the family is breaking up. So the safety of the family dynamic as nurturing and sustaining, I think, is fairly well represented by a barn because of a barn's connection to farms, farms' connection to food and sustenance and nurturance and cycles and, the planting and reaping, all of the things that are farm related would certainly also connect to ideas of sustenance, nurturance, organic naturalness, barn. It's not exactly a house dream, but barns are a little bit like a house or a home, only it's more about the animals. Again, just back to that sense of barns and farms as connecting to getting fundamental needs met that look like care and sustenance. You with me?
right.
So also this is further sort of developed by the fact that the whole family is there, right? So we ipso facto, we know that Kaya's perception of her family dynamic was well placed by being in a barn. Again, without her here to sort of get her personal association with why or what. Listen, this can be as simple as she saw a TV show that had a barn in it, and suddenly it shows up in the dreamscape, and the brain says, "Oh, what a good image to represent a shift and a change in what's going to feed and sustain me. Where's my food coming from?" What's interesting to me about wolves as the medicine in these dreams is how profoundly socialized
Hmm.
wolf packs are, just like families of humans. They're very socially engaged with tremendous sophistication in hierarchy, communication, and what we might call family dynamics. So let's look at this for a second. Barn, sustenance, wolves, pack animals, family oriented, understanding how a community works is part of wolf medicine.
Hmm.
But wolves are dangerous. Wolves are carnivorous. Wolves are frightening, right? So this never ending chasing by the wolves to me is reflecting the never ending chaos or difficulty or challenge that had to have been in a home with three young children and two parents that are contemplating a divorce.
Oh, wow.
And so the wolves are kind of giving the message of this is all changing, but somehow the family dynamic that is ultimately built just by DNA and actual connection isn't going away, even though the shape and the form is changing because of the divorce. So, at a very simple level, because this is a recurring dream while Kay is going through something very challenging, this dream was just giving voice to the part of her that was frightened that the changing dynamic in the pack order of the household was in flux. Somehow, when enough time had passed and, the chaos diminished perhaps and things were a little more settled, the dream went away because she didn't need to be reminded that the process was something she could handle. They never do catch up with her, right? That's one of the beauties of dreams, is that we play out the felt danger, but the danger never occurs because that's just like waking life. We're always a little terrified of something that may or may not happen. And the thing we imagine is going to happen never happens. There's always something else that we didn't expect, right?
Right.
So dreams sort of replicate this idea a little bit by taking the dreamer into a place where they can be with the greatest fear. What if the wolf gets me? What if I get eaten by this family chaos and then my barn-related needs of sustenance, nurturance, and care won't get met?
Yes.
But it doesn't actually happen because that's not what's happening. It's just changing. The form is changing. The family gets to a quieter place. The dream goes away. Kaya gets to see her 11th birthday with a little less emotional challenge than maybe her 8th, 9th, and 10th.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.